2, 1. Hi. Oh, my hair gets worse every single time I go on this. It's me, Mr. Yeats, back at it again with another video live from the bunker. And it is the last live video I will be doing while in lockdown. Sad, I know. But I'm here, we're still doing it, we'll still see what we can do. Now, this lesson's going to be a bit weird now, because I was in a meeting earlier, some of you know, and now I'm not in a meeting, as you can see, because I'm here with you. Well done. In this meeting, I learned that what I'm going to teach today is not what you're going to be learning for the rest of the term. So, yeah, it's going to be a bit weird that I'm teaching you something that's not really going to be relevant, but hopefully it will help you if we do go back at some point. You can be able to cast your mind back to this lesson, and it will help you a little bit in terms of thinking of English still and develop it further. Okay, so apologies that you may be thinking after today, next week, like, why does make us do that? He's a bit weird. Things change. That's what I'm gonna say. Things change. Not the same like they were about 2 hours ago. So live and learn. We learn. Everything's a learning environment. Anyway, let's stop going philosophical. Here we go. So, a few questions there. My face will reappear. My timer will appear. Date, title, written down. Type it up if you want. You don't have to write it down. 5 minutes. The time starts now. And while you write this, I can give you a bit more information if you aren't aware about what's going on in terms of next week. Next week, you will be working on a different timetable, a new timetable. I'll make sure that when I do my tutor time thing that it will be shareable for everyone. You'll be on a new timetable. It will be, I don't know, I've got it here where I shouldn't have it. Don't ask how I got it. You will be having different lessons every day compared to what you have now. So, as you are year 7, you'll be having a different lesson on a Monday compared to a different lessons you'd be having normally on a Monday. So, for example, on a Monday, you will now have MFL and maths. On a Tuesday, you'd have English and science. I don't know if I'm meant to be telling you this, but hey, I'm telling you. English and science. Wednesday, you'd have maths and geography. Thursday, you'd have science and history. Friday, you have English and art/DT/computing. Okay, so your days will look slightly different. You won't have to come to my live lessons anymore after next week because you'll be set something else. Not by me. I don't know who. I can't remember who. Don't panic. You're gonna love it. It'll be much better than me muttering on at you through this medium. Ooh, medium. Let's write that one down. Yeah. So it'll be slightly different, and you won't be doing Frankenstein like we're starting today. But hey, we'll start with it, and we'll see how it ends. Hey. Anyway, how much time have you got left? 3 minutes, okay? 3 minutes answering the questions. There's still stuff that's relevant to you in this. So try your best. 3 minutes. I'm going to come up with my own timetable while you do that. You have 2 minutes left. 2 minutes. Let me know if you're watching. I'll make sure your house points go up. You have about. Oh, do I have my microphone on still? 1 minute left. 1 minute. Sorry, I'm trying to do multiple things at once. Why is it only now come through? That's weird. You got it. I know you got it. The person sent me the email because you're chatting in the chat. I guess. So. There we go. Okay, that is your time up. So, if you wanna, if you want to pay attention to me, put your pens down. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make a little timetable for myself. I'm sad like that. I need to go there. Right, I need to get rid of that one, and my face is still here. Lovely. So, thanks for doing what you've been doing. So, what am I doing? Here we go. Hello, I'm back. True or false? Frankenstein was originally a comic book. That is, what is it? Is it false? Yes, it is false. It wasn't originally a comic book. It is a book. Number 2. Which script did we read before Easter? The Tempest. We read The Tempest before Easter, before lockdown. Number 3. What is a noun? A noun is a place, thing, object, name, thing, done, that. Lovely. Place, person, object, thing, name. Number 4. What is an adjective? It is a describing word and it describes the noun. Number 5. What is a verb? A verb is a doing / action word. Number 6. What is an adverb? An adverb is a describing word that describes how the verb is taking place. I quickly ran. I slowly moved towards the camera. Intensely, another one, staring into its lens, wondering how close I could get to it. Anyway, don't know, a bit more booing them on it. Anyway, carry on. Correct the mistake. I like Mr. Yeats the bestest. The mistake obviously would be bestest. It would only be best because when a superlative, we do not need to add est on the end. Superlatives are always the maximum or something, the most of something, or the least of something, or the smallest. The smallest, the less amount of something. Number 8. List 3 characters from The Tempest. Miranda, Prospero, Caliban, Ferdinand, Trincula. There's loads. Trincula, I got loads, but I'm not going to keep you. Sebastian, there we go. You get the idea. 3 characters. Number 9. What is the difference between there and there? There means over there. Look, over there. It's in the first there that's written there. There. See what I'm saying there a lot. Just randomly drop there into their sentences, and then you think there. There's all you hear. There, look over there. That's an example of that there. There, see? And there is their belongings. That it meant a lot to their family history. There. Number 10, what's the difference between your and your? So your isn't your and your isn't your. Easy. No. Your is your happiness, your feelings, whereas your, with the apostrophe, would be you are. So add up your scores. Let me know what you got. If you got 10 out of 10, well done. Some people in my other lessons somehow got 11 out of 10. I don't know how they managed to do that. Let me know your scores. It'd be really cool to see them. Well done. Add up your scores. Moving on. So, once I click, once it works, it's not working. Well, it does. It doesn't work, and it will do something like that and glitch. And just not work. And I'll be here looking sad. There we go. Okay, back to normal service. So, hopefully your date and title is written in. I can, probably time I've done that, I can go, see, is this what I'm on about? I didn't click anything then. What are you doing? Back. Right, it's going to go back too far now. There we go. So, I'm not doing this on purpose. I bet some of you are going, so funny. Yeah, I know I am. 9, 10. Well done. See, I told you I can get back to that one. Anyway, back to what we're meant to be doing while Mr. Yates sorts out his technical glitches. Friday, the 17th of April, 2020. That is the date today. Who is Frankenstein's what we're looking at. And again, please don't worry if you don't understand any of this, because after today, we'll be going back to Frankenstein for quite a while. Learning objectives. To understand what happens before Victor's experiment succeeds. That sounds intriguing. To develop an understanding of the character. Oh, my voice went. Oh, is it going to come back? Yeah, it's back. Phew, pain. Ow. Develop an understanding of the character of Victor Frankenstein. On target, completing all activities to the best of your ability. Above target, completing all activities to the best of your ability, and attempting to complete the extension and challenge activities. What is the big picture for today's lesson? Who is Frankenstein? So again, same as our lesson title. So think about the person Frankenstein. Who actually is Frankenstein? Who do you think they are? My phone buzzed. Just make sure it wasn't another message. Vocab focus, narrative and chalet. Okay, interesting two words there. But start off with, yay, it's working. What is the link between these two images? It's a picture of a sheep. Hopefully you visited this sheep. Not visited personally. Like, oh, hi sheep. You've seen this sheep before. And then there's a picture here. What links these two images? Write a sentence. 2 sentences. Send it in the chat. Send me an email. 1 minute. Time starts now. About 10 seconds left. They're alive! Lovely. Sorry, I don't know why I said it like that. It's probably not how you meant for it to be said. Yes, they could be. Hey, wake up. Yes, that is your time up. What is the link between these two images? They are both alive. Well done. Maybe they're both living things. What else are we going to get sent in the chat or my emails? I've got them both open. I'm ready to go. What else is the link? They're both portraits I had the other day in my lesson. That's quite a nice point. They're both pictures of living things. They're both alive, as you said. Yeah, thank you, Belle, for ringing one more time. What else could we say? What else could we say about these two things? They're both living things. Does anyone know who the sheep is? Does anyone know? It's a very famous sheep. Bit before your time. Even when I was at school, I learned all about this sheep. I can't remember what year I learned it in. Did I learn it in year 7 or year 8? Maybe it was year 8. I don't know. I didn't go to the same school, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't know exactly when you learnt it. Maybe I'll ring Mr. Thompson up and be like, yo, Mr. Thompson, did they learn about this sheep? So the lamb was I got very excited then. Lamb was created by the sheep, and Frankenstein was created by a person. You don't realise how close you are with that answer. So close. So close with that answer. So, really good, well done. The lamb was created by a person, and Frankenstein was created by a person. They're both created by a person. You're thinking, what? How does that happen? How can they both be created by a person? Well, the first sheep, I've only shown you one sheep. Mr. Yates is losing his mind. The sheep I showed you was Dolly the sheep. Now, Dolly the sheep is a famous sheep. Test tube sheep. Okay, so took the cells, put it in a test tube. Science. Sorry, should say science. Sciencey stuff. Boom, out comes a sheep. Not out of a test tube. That would be amazing. No, it's not like a cool magic trick. They put all the cells into a sheep, and the sheep was born, and it was a clone of another sheep. So it was a sheep that was humanly engineered, produced, in the same way that Frankenstein was engineered, made, and produced by a scientist. Both made by scientists. Now, obviously, this caused a lot of Mr. Yates, put your teeth in. This caused a lot of ethical dilemmas and ethical issues, but at the time, but now they've moved on because a religious state isn't what we live in as much as a society today. Oh, I've said some very long words in that sentence, and I probably confused you all. So basically, religion isn't so overbearing on us. Not overbearing. That's a wrong word. Isn't as part of our culture as it once was in terms of Christianity. Back in the more religious times. Back to this. So, which of these images meets your expectations of Frankenstein? So, when you think of Frankenstein, which do you think of? Do you think of number one? In number one, we have a man with a nail through his neck who looks a bit. It's the noise. I should do impressions. I'm going to do impressions every single one. What about this one here? It's got a bit of a different mouth shape, isn't it? So we have this one here. So we have this one here. So this one here. This one. 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 Or was it this one? Her. This one. What are you looking at? This one. This one. This one. This one's just a man standing going. So which one meets your expectation? Is it the colours that do it? Is it the way it's being portrayed? Let's have a look. You don't get extra house points for liking the video. So which one do you think it is? Which one? Is it the green? Is it the black and white ones? Which one do you think of when you think of Frankenstein? Obviously, it's gonna. Which one most like it? For me, it's this one here. I think this one reminds me of Frankenstein most because the colour mostly. Because I think around Halloween we've been accustomed to seeing. I'm gonna sneeze. Frankenstein is a character in which we dress up for in terms of it's scary. And always get the green foamy things, don't you? So that's what I think of when I see Frankenstein. The scares. Yeah. Okay. So those sort of things. That's who I think of. What am I going to do now? Oh, I don't know which slide's next. Okay. So, newsflash. Frankenstein. Oh, good. The stairs, the scars and the colours. Lovely. Okay. Scars and colours make you think of Frankenstein. So, Frankenstein was not the monster. What? Okay. Frankenstein was the scientist who created the monster. So in modern day society, somehow we've dropped the word Frankenstein's monster. We ended up as Frankenstein. Frankenstein was called Victor Frankenstein. So Victor Frankenstein was a scientist who created Frankenstein, which gets very confusing. So when you say, I'm going to dress up as Frankenstein for Halloween, someone said, no, you don't say that. If you know, oh, I'm going to dress up as Frankenstein, yay! And I'll be like, you see, you're actually incorrect because you're not dressing up as a scientist. You're actually technically dressing up as Frankenstein's monster. And they're like, oh, Mr. Yates, you're so boring. That's normally what happens. So, that's a little bit of background about Frankenstein. Frankenstein is not Frankenstein. Frankenstein is the Frankenstein, but not the Frankenstein you think Frankenstein is. Frankenstein is Victor Frankenstein, not the monster Frankenstein. Hey, easy. Easy to understand. If you don't understand, don't panic. Oh, we're going up to our viewers. Nice. So before we start reading Frankenstein, it's important how you understand that we understand how the story is told. It is told from a framed narrative, okay? So we're framing different things from different people's perspective. We have Captain Walton, we have Victor Frankenstein, and we have the monster, okay? We have three different perspectives in which we view it in this framed narrative. So the novel, it is a novel, not a film. Well, it is a film, but it's made famous as a film. The novel starts with a series of letters written by a character called Captain Walton, which is great. Captain Walton is an explorer who is on a polar expedition. Okay, so a polar expedition is somebody who's going to explore the North Pole or the South Pole. I believe it's the North Pole. Hopefully it's the North Pole. I was giving you a wrong answer. Whee! The novel is set in the 18th century, okay, so it's set in the 1700s. Walton's expedition would seem incredibly ambitious. ambitious. It is long before the first successful expedition to the North Pole in 1831. Okay, so you got to remember that in the 1700s, not many people went to the North Pole. So Captain Walton saying, "I'm going to go to the North Pole," or "I'm going to the North Pole," I'll be like, "What?" It'd be like me saying, "I'm going to go to Mars," and you'd be like, "What?" One day, people are like, "Yeah, yes, Mr. Yates, he's going to Mars again. It's fine. We do that these days, don't we?" So, what does this suggest about Walton? I'm going to make myself Walton. Yeah. What does this suggest about Walton? Why does Shelley being the author of the story, why does Shelley use him to tell the story? You may want the timer. 2 questions there for you to answer. 5 minutes. Time starts now. Any questions? Let me know. So, Captain Walton is an explorer who's on a polar expedition. Okay, so he's writing the letters in the series. The novel starts with these letters written by Captain Walton. Okay, what's your other question? We don't know he's dead. He's not dead. We don't know that. He's writing letters, so he's not dead. Okay, but in terms of it's long before the first successful expedition to the North Pole. This time, oh, I see what you mean now. I see what you mean. So really good analysis there, but I finally caught up what you meant. You see ahead of me. Great answer. We don't know. That's a very good point. So if Captain Walton wasn't the first successful person to go to the North Pole, does that mean he never returned? Or does it mean he just never reached it? Oh, that's a great question. Great answer. Great thinking. Great inference. Love that thinking. I'm going to miss that thinking next week. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Right. I'm going to make another timetable because my first one went scruffy. Don't like that pen. Don't like that pen. Throw it away. I'll prefer this pen. You have 2 minutes left to answer his questions. 2 minutes. It's probably good to chat in case you guys are saying something. Oh, sorry, here we go. Shows he wasn't very successful in the first successful mission to the North Pole in 1831, and he went in 1700. Well done, great. What are we doing? Because I was getting food. Okay, we're answering the questions on the board. Okay, on the board. Oh, I keep saying that on the screen. Okay, novel is set in 18th century. All the information needs there. Okay, so make some inference, some predictions. What you think is going to happen? You have about less than 2 minutes left. Okay, time is up. I didn't expect it to go on that long. Still trying to come up with a little timetable for myself for next week because you've got a timetable. I need one myself. So, what does this suggest? It's great you've worked it out yourselves. What does this suggest about Walton? So, Captain Walton is an ambitious person, I could say. I would say. Fairly ambitious. He enjoys adventure. He's takes risks in life, possibly. Um, Interested in science, scientific person. That's what I would suggest. Why does Shelley use him to tell the story? I guess from an aspect of inquisition. Ooh, someone who's quite inquisitive, someone who enjoys learning things, having that perspective on a scientific story about a monster being created is quite an interesting aspect to explore. So that's probably why Shelley used Walton for the story. Hopefully that will help you. So we're on to the letters, on to the letters, on to the letters, on to the letters, on to the letters. So as we said, the story begins with a series of letters. And I'm going to read some letters to you now. They're quite long. It's quite a long part of the book. So just get comfortable. Comfortable, do I say? Get comfortable. Get comfortable and get ready to follow along. So, what am I doing? Oh, that one. Hey! Letter 1 to Mrs. Saville, England, St. Petersburg, December 11th, 17 somethings. We don't actually know 17 what? We don't know. We just don't know. 1700s. Who knows? St. Petersburg. Where's St. Petersburg, you may ask? Have a Google. Ask a geography teacher. I know where it is. But have some independent learning going on. To Mrs. Saville, England, St. Petersburg, Russia. There you go. December 11th, 17. You will rejoice to hear that no disaster has accompanied the commencement of an enterprise which you have regarded with such evil forebodings. Sir, you said loads of really long words and I don't really understand what any of them meant. Don't worry. Don't worry. Okay, so I'm glad you will be glad to hear that I haven't died. Nothing bad's happened. You'll be glad to hear that. So woo! Great. I arrived here yesterday, and my first task is to assure my dear sister of my welfare and increasing confidence in the success of my undertaking. I am already far north of London, and as I walk in the streets of Petersburg, I feel a cold northern breeze play upon my cheeks, which braces my nerves and fills me with delight. Do you understand this feeling? This breeze, which has travelled from the regions towards which I am advancing, gives me a foretaste of those icy. I lost my place. How can I lose my place? Icy climbs. I can't read it. You can't read it properly, Nick, because it's all blurry. It's even blurrier for you. I apologise. Inspired by this wind of promise, my daydreams become more fervent and vivid. I will in vain. I try in vain to be persuaded that the pole is the seat of frost and desolation. It ever presents itself. To my imagination is the region of beauty and delight. There, Margaret, the sun is for ever visible, its broad disk just skirting the horizon and diffusing a perpetual splendour. Therefore, with your leave, my sister, I will put some trust in preceding navigators. The snow and frost are banished, and sailing over a calm sea, we may be wafted to a land surpassing in wonders and in beauty every region hitherto discovered on the habitable. I don't know why I keep saying habitable. I can't read. Habitable globe. Its productions and features may be without example as a phenomena of the heavenly bodies undoubtedly are in those undiscovered solitudes. What may not be expected in a country of eternal light? I may there discover the wondrous power which attracts the needle and may regulate 1,000 celestial observations that require only this voyage to render their seeming eccentricities consistent forever. I shall satiate. I will satiate. I see people. Satiate. Where am I? I keep losing my place. Do you guys distract me? You don't. That's a really poor excuse. I shall satiate my ardent curiosity with the sight of a part of the world which never the wo- Hey guys, it's me, Mr. Yates. We should start again. Never before visited, and may tread a land never before imprinted by the foot of man. These are my enticements, and they are sufficient to conquer all fear of death, of danger or death, and to induce me to commence this laborious voyage with the joy a child feels when he embarks in a little boat with his holiday mates on an expedition of discovery up his native river. But supposing all these conjectures to be false, you cannot contest the inestimable, inestimable benefit which I shall confer on all mankind to the last generation by discovering. What am I doing? By discovering a passage near the pole to those countries to reach which, at present, so many months are requisite, or by ascertaining the secret of the magnet, which, if at all possible, can only be effected by an understanding such as mine. These reflections have dispelled the agitation with which I began my letter, and I feel my heart glow with an enthusiasm which elevates me to heaven. For nothing contributes so much to tranquilize the mind as a steady purpose, a point on which the soul may fix its intellectual eye. This expedition has been the favourite dream of my early years. I have read with ardour the accounts of the various voyages which have been made in the prospect of arriving at the North Pacific Ocean through the seas which surround the pole. You may remember that a history of all voyages made for purposes of discovery composed the whole of our good Uncle Thomas's library. Keep going, you can understand, you'll be fine. I was talking to myself, not you guys. My education was neglected, yet I was passionately fond of reading. These volumes were my study day and night, and my familiarity with them increased that regret which I had felt as a child on learning that my father's dying injunction had forbidden my uncle to allow me to embark in a seafaring life. These visions faded when I pursued, for the first time, those poets whose effusions entranced my soul and lifted it to heaven. I also became a poet, and for 1 year lived in a paradise of my own creation. I imagine that I also might obtain a niche in the temple where the names of Homer and Shakespeare are consecrated. When it says Homer, it's not Homer Simpson, it's a famous Greek god. Consecrated. You are well acquainted with my failure and how heavily I bore the disappointment. But just at that time I inherited the fortune of my cousin, and my thoughts were turned into the channel of their earlier bent. 6 years have passed since I resolved on my present undertaking. I can, even now, remember the hour from which I dedicated myself to this great enterprise. I commenced by inuring my body to hardship. I accompanied the whale fishers on several expeditions to the North Sea. I voluntarily endured cold, famine, thirst, and want of sleep. I often worked harder than the common sailors during the day, and devoted my nights to the study of mathematics, the theory of medicine, and those branches of physical science from which a naval adventurer might derive the greatest practical advantage. Twice I actually hired myself as an undermate in a Greenland whaler, and acquitted myself to admiration. I must own I felt a little proud when my captain offered me the second dignity in the vessel, and entreated me to remain with the greatest earnestness, so valuable did he consider my services. And now, dear Margaret, do I not deserve to accomplish some great purpose? My life might have been passed in ease and luxury, but I prefer glory to every enticement that wealth placed in my path. Oh, that some engaging voice would answer in the affirmative. My courage and my resolution is firm, but my hopes fluctuate, and my spirits are often depressed. I am about to proceed on a long and difficult voyage, the immensities of which will demand all my fortitude. I am required not only to raise the spirits of others, but sometimes to sustain my own when theirs are failing. This is the most favourable period for travelling in Russia. There we go, confirmed. They fly quickly over the snow in their sledges. The motion is pleasant, and in my opinion, far more agreeable than that of an English stagecoach. The cold is not excessive if you are wrapped in furs, a dress which I have already adopted, for there is a great difference between walking the deck and remaining seated, motionless, for hours, when no exercise prevents the blood from actually freezing in your veins. I have no ambition to lose my life on the post road between St. Petersburg and Archangel. I shall depart for the latter town in a fortnight or 3 weeks, and my intention is to hire a ship there, which can easily be done by paying the insurance for the owner, and to engage as many sailors as I think necessary among those who are accustomed to the whale fishing. I do not intend to sail until the month of June, and when shall I return? Ah, dear sister, how can I answer this question? If I succeed, many, many months, perhaps years, will pass before you and I may meet. If I fail, you'll see me again soon, or never. Farewell, my dear, excellent Margaret. Heaven shower down blessings on you, and save me that I may again and again testify my gratitude for all your love and kindness. Your affectionate brother, R. Walton. Okay, so bit of a long letter there. We learn a lot about Walton, the fact he's on a polar expedition, writing to his sister. Know he's in Russia. There's quite a lot we've learned. I'm just going to keep going back and seeing what you guys have written. Right. Yeah, so you used him because it makes you think about it as an adventure, but it's not. Lovely. Yeah, I know it's blurry, sorry. You don't get house points for subscribing. What are wall voyages? Okay, so the voyages in terms of like a journey, a voyage in the sea. Okay, so you go on an ocean voyage normally. It's like a trip, a journey. Great question. Large walls on the voyage. Okay, you've worked it out between you really well. Okay, it's like problems. Okay. No, we're not all reading all lesson. No, that'd be boring, wouldn't it? Right, we're not boring. So that was the wrong thing. It'd be cumbersome. Cumbersome. We'll go with that word. I apologise that it's blurry. What it is the book and the fact that I can't get my visualizer as focused. That bit better. Looks a bit better to me. Because normally I press the focus button on the visualizer when I'm at school, but because because we're on a different system here in the hub, it's not the hub, it's in the bunker. That it doesn't work properly, so I apologise. Letter 2 to Mrs. Saville, Archangel, 28th of March at 17. Summon. We don't know which the something is. How slowly the time passes here, encompassed as I am by frost and snow. Yet a second step is taken towards my enterprise. I have hired a vessel and am occupied in collecting my sailors. Those whom I have already engaged appear to be men on whom I can depend and are certainly possessed of dauntless courage. But I have one want which I have never yet been able to satisfy, and the absence of the object of which I now feel as a most severe evil. I have no friend. Ah, so he's lonely. Margaret, when I am glowing with the enthusiasm of success, there will be none to participate my joy. So when I've done something great, there'll be there no one to share it with. Sad, that, isn't it? If I am assailed by disappointment, no one will endeavour to sustain me in dejection. I shall commit my thoughts to paper. It is true, but that is a poor medium for the communication of feeling. I desire the company of a man who could sympathise with me, whose eyes I desire the company of a man who could sympathise with me, whose eyes replied to mine. You may deem me romantic, my dear sister, but I bitterly feel the want of a friend. I think we can all empathise with that at the moment, can't we? I have no one to hear me, gentle yet courageous, possessed of a cultivated as well as a capacious mind, whose tastes are like my own, to prove or amend my plans. How would such a friend repair the faults of your poor brother? I am too ardent in execution and too impatient of difficulties, but it's still a greater evil to me that I am self-educated. For the first 14 years of my life, I ran wild on a common and read nothing but our Uncle Thomas's books of voyages. At that age, I became acquainted, so familiar with the celebrated poets of our own country. But it was not only when it had, but it was only when it had ceased to be in my power to derive its most important benefits from such a conviction that I perceived the necessity of becoming acquainted with more languages than that of my native country. Now I am 28, and I am in reality more illiterate than many schoolboys of 15, so you can't read as much as you thought you could. It's true that I have thought more and that my daydreams are more extended and magnificent, but they want, as the palers call it, keeping. And I greatly need a friend who would have sense enough not to despise me as romantic and affection enough for me to endeavour to regulate my mind. Well, these are useless complaints. I shall certainly find no friend on the wide ocean, nor even here in Archangel, among merchants and seamen. Yet some feelings, unallied to the dross of human nature, be even in these rugged bosoms. My lieutenant, for instance, is a man of wonderful courage and enterprise. He is desirous of glory, or rather, to word my phrase more characteristically, of advancement in his profession. He is an Englishman, and in the midst of national and professional prejudices, unsoftened by cultivation, retains some of the noblest endowments of humanity. Good, good for him. I first became acquainted with him on board a whale vessel. Finding that he was unemployed in this city, I easily engaged him to assist in my enterprise. The master is a person of an excellent disposition, and is remarkable in the ship for his gentleness and the mildness of his discipline. This circumstance, added to his well-known integrity and dauntless courage, made me very desirous to engage him. A youth passed in solitude, my best years spent under your gentle and feminine fosterage, has so refined the groundwork of my character that I cannot overcome an intense distaste to the usual brutality exercised on board ship. So I'm not used to the way that people are like, "Oh, hey, you're right, right? How's it going?" Because she's used to a society of, "Oh, you're right. Yeah, give you a little bit of a cuddle." I've never believed it to be necessary. When I heard a mariner equally noted for his kindliness of heart and respect and obedience paid to him by his crew, I felt myself peculiarly fortunate in being able to secure his services. I heard of him first in rather a romantic manner from a lady who owes to him the happiness of her life, his wife. This briefly is his story. Some years ago, he loved a young Russian lady of moderate fortune, and having amassed a considerable sum in prize money, the father of the girl consented to the match. He saw his mistress once before the destined ceremony, but she was bathed in tears, and throwing herself at his feet, entreated him to spare her, confessing at the same time that she loved another, but that he was poor, and that her father would never consent to the union. My generous friend reassured the suppliant, and on being informed of the name of her lover, instantly abandoned his pursuit. He had already bought a farm with his money, on which he had designed to pass the remainder of his life, but he bestowed the whole on his bestowed the whole of his rival, together with the remains of his prize money, to purchase stock, and then himself solicited the young woman's father to consent to her marriage with her lover. But the old man decidedly refused, thinking himself bound in honour to my friend, who, when he found the father inexorable, quitted his country, nor returned until he heard that his former mistress was married according to her inclinations. What a noble fellow, you will exclaim. He is so, but then he is wholly uneducated. He is silent as a Turk, and a kind of ignorant carelessness attends him, which, while it renders his conduct the most astonishing, detracts from the interest and sympathy which otherwise he would command. Yet, do you not suppose, because I complain a little, or because I can conceive a consolation for my tolls, which I may never know that I am writing in my resolution, those are as fixed as fate, and my voyage is only now delayed until the weather shall permit my embarkation. The winter has been dreadfully severe, but the spring promises well, and is considered as a remarkably early season, so that perhaps I may sail sooner than I expected. I shall do nothing rashly. You know me sufficiently to confide in my prudence and considerateness whenever the safety of others is committed to my care. I cannot describe to you my sensations on the near prospect of my undertaking. It is impossible to communicate to you a concept of my trembling sensation, half pleasurable and half fearful, with which I am preparing to depart. I am going to unexplored regions, to the land of mist and snow. But I shall kill no albatross, think Harry Potter. Therefore, do not be alarmed for my safety, or if I should come back to you as worn and woeful as the ancient mariner. You will smile at my illusion, but I will disclose a secret. I have often attributed my attachment to my passionate enthusiasm for the dangerous mysteries of the ocean to that production of the most imaginative of modern poets. There is something at work in my soul which I do not understand. I am practically industrious, painstaking, a workman to execute with perseverance and labour. But besides this, there is a love for the marvellous, a belief in the marvellous, intertwined in all my project, which hurries me out of the common pathways of men, even to the wild sea and unvisited regions I'm about to explore. But to return to dearer considerations, shall I meet you again, after having traversed immense seas and returned by the most southern cape of Africa or America? I dare not expect such success, yet I cannot bear to look on the reverse of the picture. Continue for the present to write to me by every opportunity. I may receive your letters on some occasion when I need them most to support my spirits. I love you very tenderly. Remember me with affection, should you never hear from me again. Your affectionate brother, Robert Walton. So a minute ago it was R. Walton, now it's Robert Walton, which is quite interesting in terms of the way that affections progressed in these letters. I'm just going to go back and have a look at what you've been writing. It's possible to make it. No, it's not right. Okay. Wag one, Mr. Yeats. It's me. Lovely. Yo, names. Yeah. What? Hello, geezer. Wag one, my G's. No, we're not reading all lesson. You guys think, there's stuff to do. I mean, it's not just reading. Right. No, not that one. That one. Letter 3. To Mrs. Saville, England, July 7th, 17. It's quite a short letter, so. My dear sister, I write a few lines in haste to say that I am safe and well advanced on my voyage. This letter will reach England by a merchant man now on its homeward voyage from Archangel. More fortunate than I, who may not see my native land perhaps for many years, I am, however, in good spirits. My men are bold and apparently firm of purpose, nor do the floating sheets of ice that continually pass us, indicating the dangers of the region towards which we are advancing, appear to dismay them. We have already reached a very high latitude, but it is the height of summer, and although not so warm as in England, the southern gales which blow speedily towards those shores, which I so ardently desire to attain, breathe a degree of renovating warmth which I had not expected. No incidents have hitherto befallen us that would make a figure in a letter. One or two stiff gales and the springing of a leak are accidents which experienced navigators scarcely remember to record, and I shall be well content if nothing worse happen to us during our voyage. As you, my dear Margaret, be assured that for my own sake as well as yours, I will not rashly encounter danger. I will be cool, persevering, and prudent. But success shall crown my endeavours. Wherefore not? Thus far I have gone tracing a secure way over the pathless seas. The very stars, I don't know why I said it like that, stars, the very stars themselves, still said it weird, being witnesses and testimonies of my triumph. Why not proceed over the untamed yet obedient element? What can stop the determined heart and resolved will of man? My swelling heart involuntarily pours itself out thus, but I must finish. Heaven bless my beloved sister, Rua, or RW, as most sensible people would say. Right, let's have a Senate. Right. One way state, Senate. Right. Yes, 128 subscribers. I'm very proud. No, he hasn't said where he's from. He's on a voyage at the moment. I think it comes like homeland England, native land England, so we can assume that he's from England. That's his native land. That is where he's from. Letter 4. Got an itchy head. That's a weird thing, because it was on the other page. It said letter 3, and I said letter 4, and it looked like I couldn't read, but I can. Letter 4. To Mrs. Saville, England, August 5th, 17. So strange an accident has happened to us that I cannot forbear recording it, although it is very probable that you will see me before these papers can come into your possession. Last Monday, July 31st, we were nearly surrounded by ice, which closed in the ship on all sides, scarcely leaving her the sea room in which she floated. Our situation was somewhat dangerous, especially as we were encompassed round by a very thick fog. We accordingly lay to. I think it's the light that's doing it, making it difficult to read. We accordingly lay to, hoping that some change would take place in the atmosphere and weather. About 2 o'clock, the mist cleared away, and we beheld, stretched out in every direction, vast and irregular plains of ice, which seemed to have no end. Some of my comrades groaned, and my own mind began to grow watchful with anxious thoughts when a strange sight suddenly attracted our attention and diverted our solitude from our own situation. We perceived a low carriage fixed on a sledge and drawn by dog pass on towards the north, at the distance of half a mile. A being which had the shape of a man, but apparently of gigantic stature, sat in the sledge and guided the dogs. Who could that be? We watched the rapid progress of the traveller with our telescopes until he was lost among the distant inequalities of the ice. This appearance excited our unqualified wonder. We were, as we believed, many hundred miles from any land, but this apparition seemed to denote that it was not in reality so distant as we had supposed. Shut in, however, by ice, it was impossible to follow his track, which we had observed with the greatest attention. About 2 hours after this occurrence, sea we heard the ground sea, and before night the ice broke and freed our ship. We, however, lay to until the morning, fearing to encounter in the dark those large loose masses which float about after the breaking up of the ice. I profited of this time to rest for a few hours. In the morning, however, as soon as it was light, I went upon deck and found all the sailors busy on one side of the vessel, apparently talking to someone in the sea. It was in fact a sledge, like that we had seen before, which had drifted towards us in the night on a large fragment of ice. Only one dog remained alive, but there was a human being within it, whom the sailors were persuading to enter the vessel. He was not, as the other travellers seemed to be, a savage inhabitant of some undiscovered island, but a European. Ooh. When I appeared on deck, the master said, "Here is our captain, and he will not allow you to perish in the open sea." On perceiving me, the stranger addressed me in English, although with a foreign accent. "Before I come on board your vessel," said he, "will you have the kindness to inform me whither you are bound?" You may conceive my astonishment in hearing such a question addressed to me from a man on the brink of destruction, and to whom should have supposed that my vessel would have been a resource which he would not have exchanged for the most precious wealth on the earth can afford. I replied, however, that we were on a voyage of discovery towards the northern pole. Upon hearing this, he appeared satisfied and consented to come on board. Good God! Margaret, if you had seen the man who thus capitulated for his safety, your surprise would have been boundless. His limbs were nearly frozen, and his body dreadfully emaciated? Yes, we'll go with that. Yeah, emaciated by fatigue and suffering. I never saw a man in so wretched a condition. We attempted to carry him into the cabin, but as soon as he had quitted the fresh air, he fainted. We accordingly brought him back to the deck and restored him to animation by rubbing him with brandy and forcing him to swallow a small quantity. As soon as he showed signs of life, we wrapped him up in blankets and placed him near the chimney of the kitchen stove. By slow degrees, he recovered and ate a little soup, which restored him wonderfully. 2 days passed in this manner before he was able to speak, and I often feared that his sufferings had deprived him of understanding. When he had in some measure recovered, I removed him to my own cabin, and attended on him as much as my duty would permit. I never saw a more interesting creature. His eyes have generally an expression of wildness, and even madness. But there are moments when, if anyone performs an act of kindness towards him, or does any the most trifling service, his whole countenance is lighted up, as it were, with a beam of benevolence and sweetness that I never saw equalled. But he is generally melancholy, so quite sad, and despairing, and sometimes he gnashes his teeth, as if impatient of the weight of woes that oppress him. When my guest was a little recovered, I had great trouble to keep off the men who wished to ask him 1,000 questions, but I would not allow him to be tormented by their idle curiosity, in a state of body and mind, whose restoration evidently depended upon entire repose. Once, however, the lieutenant asked why he had come so far upon the ice in so strange a vehicle. His countenance instantly assumed an aspect of the deepest gloom, and he replied, "To seek one who fled from me." "And did the man whom you pursued travel in the same fashion?" "Yes, and I fancy we have seen him, for the day before we picked you up, we saw some dogs drawing a sledge with a man in it across the ice." This aroused the stranger's attention, and he asked a multitude of questions concerning the route which the demon, as he called him, had pursued. Soon after, when he was alone, with me, he said, "I have doubtless excited your curiosity as well as one of these good as well as that of these good people, but you are too considerate to make inquiries. Certainly would indeed be very impertinent and inhuman in me to trouble you with any inquisitiveness of mine, and yet you rescued me from a strange and perilous situation. You have benevolently restored me to life." Soon after this, he inquired if I thought that the breaking up of the ice had destroyed the other sledge. I replied that I could not answer with any degree of certainty, for the ice had not broken until near midnight, and the traveller might have arrived at a place of safety before that time. But of this I could not judge. From this time, a new spirit of life animated the decaying frame of the stranger. He manifested the greatest eagerness to be upon deck to watch for the sledge which had before appeared, but I persuaded him to remain in the cabin. For he is far too weak to sustain the rawness of the atmosphere. I've promised that someone should watch for him and give him instant notice if any new object should appear in sight. Such is my journal of what relates to this strange occurrence up to the present day. The stranger has gradually improved in health, but is very silent and appears uneasy when anyone except myself enters his cabin. Yet his manners are so conciliating and gentle that the sailors are all interested in him, although they have had very little communication with him. For my own part, I begin to love him as a brother, and his constant and deep grief fills me with sympathy and compassion. He must have been a noble creature in his better days, being even now in wreck so attractive and amiable. I said in one of my letters, my dear Margaret, that I should find no friend on the wide ocean. If I had found a man who, before his spirit had been broken by misery, I should have been happy to have possessed as the brother of my heart. I shall continue my journal concerning the stranger at intervals, should I have any fresh incidents to record. So although this letter was sent obviously as one massive one, um, there is a few things that you're going to keep updating and send it. Right, let's read this. Yes, you can go toilet. Yeah, I'll sign your planner, yeah. Lesson ends at 3. I don't mind if anyone dislikes. Dislike all you want. Don't mind. Yeah, it'll be sad next week when there's no more live streams. Ha! August 13th, 17. My affection for my guest even, increases every day. He excites me. I don't know if that's made it worse or better. Who knows? He excites at once my admiration, my pity to an astonishing degree. How can I see so noble a creature destroyed by misery without feeling the most poignant grief? He is so gentle yet so wise, his mind is so cultivated, and yet when he speaks, although his words are cold with the choicest art, yet they flow with rapidity and unparalleled eloquence. He is now much recovered from his illness, and is continually on the deck, apparently watching for the sledge that preceded his own. Yet, although unhappy, he is not so utterly occupied by his own misery, but that he interests himself deeply in the prospect of others. He has frequently conversed with me on mine, which I have communicated to him without disguise. He entered attentively into all my arguments in favour of my eventual success, and into every minute detail of the measures I had taken to secure it. I was easily led by the sympathy which he evinced to use the language of my heart, to give utterance to the burning ardour of my soul, and to say, with all the fervour that warmed me, how gladly I would sacrifice my fortune, my existence, my every hope, to the furtherance of my enterprise. One man's life or death were but a small price to pay for the acquirement of the knowledge which I sought for the dominion I should acquire and transmit over the elemental foes of our race. As I spoke, a dark gloom spread over my listener's countenance. At first I perceived that he tried to suppress his emotion. He placed his hands before his eyes, and my voice quivered and failed me as I beheld tears trickle fast from between his fingers. A groan burst out from his heaving breast. I paused. At length he spoke in broken accents. Unhappy man, do you share my madness? Have you drunk also of the intoxicating draught? Hear me. Let me reveal my tale, and you will dash the cup from your lips. Such words, you may imagine, strongly excited my curiosity, but the paroxysm, even, of grief that had seas, the stranger overcame his weakened powers, and many hours of repose and tranquil conversation were necessary to restore his composure. Having conquered the violence of his feelings, he appeared to despise himself for being the slave of passion, and quelling the dark tyranny of despair, he led me again to converse concerning myself personally. He asked me the history of my earlier years. The tale was quickly told, but it awakened various trains of nearly there. Reflection. I spoke of my desire of finding a friend, of my thirst for a more intimate sympathy with a fellow mind that had ever fallen to my lot, and expressed my conviction that the man could boast of little happiness who did not enjoy this blessing. I agree with you, replied the stranger. We are unfashioned creatures, but half made up, if one is wiser, better, dearer than ourselves. Such a friend ought to be. Do not lend his aid to perfection our weak and faulty natures. I once had a friend, the most noble of human creatures, and I am entitled, therefore, to judge respecting friendship. You have hope and the world before you, and have no cause for despair. But I have lost everything and cannot begin life anew. As he said this, his countenance became expressive of a calm, settled grief that touched me to the heart. But he was silent, and presently retired to his cabin. Even broken in spirit as he is, no one can feel more deeply than he does the beauties of nature. The starry sky, the sea, and every sight afforded by these wonderful regions seem still to have the power of elevating his soul from earth. Such a man has a double existence. He may suffer misery and be overwhelmed by disappointments, yet when he has retired into himself, he will be like a celestial spirit that has a halo around him, within whose circle no grief or folly ventures. Will you smile at the enthusiasm I express concerning this divine wanderer? You would not if you saw him. You have been tutored and refined by books and retirement from this world, and you are wake up, stop, hey, pay attention. Yeah, you know, I'm talking to you. Yeah, pay attention. You've been yeah, thank you. And therefore somewhat fastidious, but this only renders you the more fit to appreciate the extraordinary merits of this wonderful man. Sometimes I have endeavoured to discover that quality it is which he possesses that elevates him so immeasurably above any other person I ever knew. I believe it to be an initiative, discernment, intuitive. I don't know why I can't read. Intuitive discernment, a quick but never failing power of judgment, a penetration into the causes of things unequalled for clearness and precision. Add to this a facility of expression, and a voice whose varied intonations are soul subduing music. Check. Just checking. See, yeah, so I knew that would you if I'm just checking the chat. It takes a little while, that does. We'll have to do it next week. August 19th, 17. Yesterday the stranger said to me, You may easily perceive, Captain Walton, that I have suffered great and unparalleled misfortunes. I determined at one time that the memory of these evils should die with me, but you have won me to alter my determination. You seek for knowledge and wisdom as I once did, and I ardently hope that the gratification of your wishes may not be a serpent to sting you, as mine has been. I do not know that the relation of my disasters will be useful to you, yet when I reflect that you are pursuing the same course, exposing yourself to the same dangers, some which have rendered, which have rendered, I've lost my place again, me, what I am, I imagine that you may deduce an apt moral from my tale, one that may direct you if you succeed in your undertaking, console you in case of failure. Prepared to hear of occurrences which are usually deemed marvellous. Were we among the tamer scenes of nature, I might fear to encounter your unbelief, perhaps your ridicule, but many things will appear possible in these wild and mysterious regions, which would provoke the laughter of those unacquainted with the ever varied powers of nature. Nor can I doubt but that my tale conveys in its series eternal evidence of the truth of the events of which it is composed. You may easily imagine that I was gratified by the offered communication, yet I could not endure that he should renew his grief by a recital of his misfortunes. I felt the greatest eagerness to hear the promised narrative, partly from curiosity, and partly from a strong desire to ameliorate his fate, if it were in my power. I expressed these feelings in my answer. I thank you, he replied, for your sympathy, but it is useless. My fate is nearly fulfilled. I wait but for one event, and then I shall repose in peace. I understand your feeling, continued he, perceiving that I wished to interrupt him, but you are mistaken, my friend. If thus you will allow me to name you, nothing can alter my destiny. Listen to my history, and you'll perceive how irrevocably it is determined. He then told me that he would commence his narrative the next day when I should be at leisure. The promise drew from me the warmest thanks. I have resolved every night, when I am not imperatively occupied by my duties, to record as nearly as possible, as is in his own words, what he has related during the day. If I should be engaged, I will at least make notes. This manuscript will doubtless afford you the greatest pleasure, but to me, who know him, and who hear it from his own lips, with what interest and sympathy shall I read it in some future day? Even now, as I commence my task, his full-toned voice swells in my ears, his lustrous eyes dwell on me with all the melancholy sweatness. Sweat, yeah, like that, sweatiness. Ugh. I see this thin raised, I see this thin hand raised in animation, while the lineaments of his face are irradiated by the soul within. Strange and harrowing must be his story, frightful the storm which embraced the gallant vessel on its course and wrecked it thus. You'll be glad to know that is the end of that page and the end of the letter. So we learned quite a bit of information about Captain Walton there, Captain Robert Walton. That is interesting. Hopefully, just check the what book is this? I forgot. It's Frankenstein. Oh, great, lovely. So, listen page. That one. Next. Thank you. Next. Let's see. There we go. Oh, I'll move myself over here. Just for the moment. So, what is the effect of opening a story with letters? Oh, I didn't want that. No. They wanted to do that. Back. Uh-oh. SpaghettiOs. Okay. There we go. What is the effect of opening a story with letters? What have we learnt from those letters? Oh, it's funny, isn't it? Why do you think Shelley has started a story like this? There's a challenge question for you there. So I'm going to put the timer up as well. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to answer those questions, just up until the end of the lesson. 5 minutes, open chat. Here we go. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Checking my. I need a different colour. You can write in the chat if you want. It's fine by me. You have 2 minutes left. Okay, about 1 minute left now. 1 minute. They open the book with letters so we can understand that what has already happened in his life so far. Lovely, lovely answer. Well done. Shit, house points are going on. I'm gonna sneeze. There you go. It is time up. So, make sure I select the right people. Let's go through the answers. Get rid of this one. So, what is the opening? What is the effect of opening the book? The novella, the novel with the letters. I had an answer here somewhere. They open the book with letters so we can understand what has already happened in life so far. Great answer. Well done. What have we learnt from these letters? We have learnt that he went to the North Pole, that he wasn't successful. It opens with a letter because it shows his backstory slash past. Lovely answers. Well done. Why do you think Shelley has started a story like this? Is kind of answered ones before, isn't it? So we get an idea of the backstory, get an idea of what happened before, what sort of scientific themes are coming through. What can we infer about Walton from these lessons? We've kind of did that already, haven't we? You can infer that he's a caring person for his sister. He cares for science. He cares for things like that. So, I'm running out of time. I don't want to keep you too long because it is the end of the lesson. So thank you for tuning in to our last ever live stream as we know it for 7-2. You're, like I said earlier in the beginning of the video, it will look slightly different next week for you, but please don't be discouraged. Please keep doing the work. Sorry that we've just done Frankenstein for a lesson. We're not really going to go back to it. Sorry. This was planned before I found out that we weren't going to do it for much longer. So thank you for tuning in. Have a lovely weekend. You don't have to do work over the weekend unless you've got loads of work to catch up with, and I suggest you do it. But you don't have to work over the weekend. Just to finish off with, make sure you wash your hands, guys. Don't go out when you're not meant to. Thanks for tuning in. See you again soon. Bye, 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 bye. End stream. End.